Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for staying with us on Radio 1 FM 90. This is Spectrum, where we discuss key issues that are trending in our country, as we also set the pace for, as we also set the agenda for discussing and analyzing issues in our country. Today, we'll be looking at the silent issues in Uganda as we commemorate the International Labour Day. Well, today, workers in Uganda joined the global community to commemorate May Day, or the International Labour Day, under the theme Improving Access to Labour Justice, a prerequisite for increased productivity. President Yoweri Museveni was a chief guest at the national event held in the tourism city of Fort Portal. Now, this is an opportunity for employers, workers, and duty bearers to reflect on labor-related issues in our country. There are emerging issues and those that have persisted over time that stakeholders say need to be addressed holistically. Now, this evening, I have experts in this field to reflect on some of these silent issues, in particular, the area that we have been hearing about, the issues of access to justice for labor, or improving access to labor justice, as articulated in the theme, but also other issues that have persisted for very many years. We do value your feedback and your contribution to this show, and I'll encourage you to share with us via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 In studio, Ms. Lydia Buite, Manager Rights, Social Protection and Accountability at the Platform for Labor Action. She's also an advocate. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Lydia.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, for inviting us.
In studio also, Mr. Abdallah Kayonde, President of Migrant Workers' Voice, organization that advocates for the rights of Ugandans who have been externalized to work in other countries. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening, Kenneth. I welcome you also to this program.
Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be joined on the line at a later stage by someone who has attended the commemoration in Fort Portal, and to share with us their reflection on the issues as they appeared in that tourism city. But let's begin here in studio, and I'll begin with you, Lydia, to help us set the pace. We are commemorating International Labour Day. The theme is improving access to labour justice, a prerequisite for increased productivity. As a stakeholder, key stakeholder in this particular area, how would you describe the situation in which we are as we commemorate this particular day? What are the issues that come to your mind very fast?
Thank you so much, Kenneth, and I want to thank our dear listeners for tuning in on Radio 1. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the workers in Uganda and across the globe for once again reaching another day of reflecting, of looking at the achievements, reflecting on the struggles within the labor movement, what we have achieved and what remains to be achieved. So, and I want to state categorically that this day is not only for the workers that work in offices. No, it isn't. It's not. It's for workers, all the workers that actually you have you produce something. You do something that gives you money. So I congratulate each and every one that we have been able to witness also this day come to pass. Looking at the theme, Kenneth, and our dear listeners, as you have clearly stated it, and maybe just for emphasis, which stated increasing access to labor justice, a prerequisite for increased productivity. For me, when I look at this theme and I put into context the current labor and employment situation within the country, first of all, this theme, when we talk about labor justice, we are basically talking about fairness within the labor and employment sector. It is fairness either in terms of wages that the workers earn. It is fairness in terms of access to remedy when there is a dispute between the employer and the employee. We're talking about fairness in terms of having labor administrative structures that are very, very functional, that are able to ensure that the workers and the employers are able to be supported to ensure that there is fairness in the world of work. At this workplace, there should be fairness. So that is what really comes in mind. But I'll quickly run through what is happening with all those principles of fairness that we're talking about, because access to labor justice, someone may only tilt themselves to going to court. But no, we're talking about fairness in the labor and employment sector. So if we are saying that increased access to labor justice is actually the prerequisite for increased productivity. Kenneth and our dear listeners, we've had a challenge in Uganda where our productivity, just within the region, it is way below compared to the rest of the East African countries. They say for Uganda, our productivity, it takes a Ugandan 2 hours to produce a cup of tea, yet a Kenyan will only use 30 minutes. But what is happening in this country is that if the labor administration structures are not properly functional, then dreaming of fairness
and justice
justice, that there is be labor justice, we can't have it.
What
the
do
labor
you
administration
mean?
structures, I'll quickly just enlist some of them. One, we have the labor officers, and here every district is supposed to have a fully fledged labor office and functional, and that labor office has a mandate to do so much in terms of ensuring that there is actually fairness, there is justice in the world of work between the employer and the employee. Now here we are. We have some districts in Uganda. Out of we have 146 districts now as we speak, inclusive of municipalities. As we speak now, we have about 77 fully and substantively appointed labor officers. So we have almost another half of districts in Uganda without substantive labor officers. These labor officers are in charge of inspection, workplace inspections, to inspect workplaces to ensure that whatever is taking place in the different workspaces is actually aligns to what the standards that the country has actually set in place. So just imagine, and I would ask, do we mean to say that in those other districts that do not have substantively appointed labor officers, we have no workers? Definitely they are there. So the question of access to justice, when some of the labor structures are not functional, or they are not there, or if they are there, they're using community development officers in acting capacity, which community development officers will instead run up to PDM because that one has money. They'll run up to YLP, Youth Livelihood Program. They run up to UWEP. So you see that the structures, the labor structures themselves are not actually functional. Where they exist, they are also slapped with limited funding. From the budget, the conditioned grant that comes from the central government to the local government. So the budget for the community development department, on that budget, the labor office only gets 5% of that budget. So let's imagine that in a particular district, the budget for the community development is 50 million. So and I'll put it at that high, but we have where there are 30 million in a financial year. So the labor officer will have where it is 30 million, will have, because it's a 5%, they will have 1.5 for the entire financial year. For the listeners, we know for sure the entire financial year is 12 months. So that money is supposed to, the labor officer is supposed to use it for workplace inspection, it's supposed to investigate workplace disputes, it's supposed to settle, it's supposed to go and investigate, it's supposed to do everything with, let's say, 1.5 million shillings. So that person is unable. We also have the issue of capacity of the officers being appointed in these offices. Do they have the capacity really to administrate the labor justice we are talking about? Do they have the capacity? So the change we are having right now is that for one to become a labor officer, there are no laid down qualifications, you know. To our dear listeners, the labor office at some point, it is a court of first instance. Not even at some point, but it is a court of first instance in labor-related matters. True. No one can go to the industrial court unless you have gone through the labor office. So when it is sitting as a court, imagine as a court that it can even do an award which can be executed in the industrial court. The industrial court of Uganda is at the level of a high court. Actually, we could take it as a division of the High Court, but specifically looking at labor-related matters. So you can imagine that this person, the capacity of this person to dispense labor justice, when sitting as a court, this person can be a social worker.
All right. Let's now hear from Abdallah Kayonde. You speak for migrant workers, people who are exported abroad to go and work. And one of the things we have seen is actually disputes, complaints that keep on emerging. What has been your experience in addressing these issues through the government system in line with this theme that we are looking at? Are there adequate mechanisms through which concerns by Ugandans who are complaining from abroad can be addressed?
You know, our struggle has been actually jeopardized in vain. Like I've had my sister also stressing it, and what I've summarized actually from her speech, you can sense where corruption now arises. When people cannot be actually facilitated, people you expect to handle incidences fast, they are underfunded or even not funded at all. Now, when it comes to migrant workers, which is a safety net for those that have failed in such a status quo that Lydia has just explained, this comes, it brings us to the rise of the voices like the migrant workers' voice you hear today, and so many others who are standing for the justice, not in only the areas of disputes, the other side, but also even the policies here. The policies in place are not favorable to drive the proposed business, the proposed safety net for those that have failed into the Kwagamaya kind of status quo that Madame Lydia has explained. Now, that also informs us that one should not wonder why people are pushed to move in sheer numbers. And if they must move, and government wants to benefit from that, we have to strike a balance to get what you call justice. It doesn't come after deployment.
All right. What I would be interested in to hear, are there mechanisms to probably help those Ugandans when they have challenges abroad where they are working from, or if the companies that exported them are here in the country? Do you see mechanisms, a laid out strategy to help them in terms of having access to justice?
Right from the inception, what I was trying to tell you is that the whole process from the word go is not straight. Therefore, you don't expect justice. It's not straight as in how. One, there is no social order for those who expect justice. You can't have any justice for this labor or whatever you may call labor, and you move in a state of nature. There is no regulation that actually organizes the workers that are externalized. You will tell me the regulations are there, but the regulations are available. They organize the recruiters, not the workers. So the workers are left in a state whereby anyone can take advantage of them. Number two, even the available regulations that regulate the recruiters do not sufficiently support the justice we may want from across borders. So the whole system by today cannot, as I inform you, it cannot deliver us to the justice that the president is talking about. We can only do that if we look back and organize look into amendment of policies or come up with new acts that can enable us to actually get to the right way if we cannot avoid this business. We need to look into the issue of inclusion of the stakeholders. That's to say that if they have to align and allow the workers and everybody stakeholder to come and say something on board, we have to accept that when we discuss as a tripartite arrangement, or we discuss as all stakeholders concerning this business, it will help everyone to have an informed choice, informed decision, and the next day we shall now have justice.
All right, Lydia, the government has been saying that look, do not accept to be taken abroad by people who are not registered, who are not issued the license. They tell us there's a department in the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development that is actually looking into these things, and they have also signed MOUs with the countries where Ugandans are actually going to work. But when you hear from Mr. Kayonde, he seems to suggest that there's no clear-cut system to actually help these Ugandans. What is your experience when it comes to issues of externalization of labor?
Actually, thank you so much. I listened to the president when he was addressing us, the workers, today, and one of his complaints was that he does not he's blaming the people who are going to work in Arab countries. But I felt like the president was very indifferent. He does not really understand what is happening below his nose. He either he's being misinformed, I'm not sure.
It will be surprising because it's his government that is entering into MOUs.
Yes, and that's why I was like, so why do you then allow a minister to go out of the country
and
using government resources, our little money that we collect as the workers in this country, by the way, and then you're the same person coming to say you're blaming the people who are going to work in Arab countries, that they have failed to use the available resources.
Maybe he was talking about those who go back doors.
No. He did not differentiate. Indeed, he said he's blaming Ugandans who are opting to go and work abroad. But in a country where the average earning is 200,000 shillings. That is the average. Where only 1% of the working population earns 1 million shilling and above. In a country, and in another country that a domestic worker, is going to earn 800 and above, then you would blame your population, your laborers, to move to that country. Have you put in place protective mechanisms for the workers back home? He has distanced himself from a minimum wage.
Yeah, he even talked about it.
He does not want to protect the workers in this country.
Even you people are complaining about unemployment. He also addressed you and he said, you are not listening to the government. The solution is not about increasing more jobs or paying better wages. It's about creating wealth. You have not been listening. You've not been listening to the government.
Where is the wealth? Where is the wealth that is being created?
He talked about the different sectors where you can invest.
A worker who is earning 200,000 shillings. By the way, I talked about the maiden wage or the average. In terms of the cost of living in this country, is between 300 and 450. That's the cost of living
per month.
So if that is the cost of living, but the average earning of majority of the Ugandans is 200 Uganda shillings, and then you talk about making wealth. Where is the wealth being
Get
created?
into agriculture.
So
go to farming.
Okay, good. Let us say
commercial farming.
We are going to go into commercial farming. Where the incentives that they have put into that particular sector. The workers recently have been in a standoff with just people who are working here in Chikubu. They are standoff between them and URA, and they are telling them, but you're also taxing even on agricultural inputs. We have to put a tax on it. Look, I think that's when I said that I feel like the president was very indifferent, and I'm not sure if he understands the kind of that day he was actually addressing. I think any other person who listened will actually bear me witness and agree with me. So the issue that we're talking about, that people Ugandans who are making a decision, and by the way, in that making the decision, the same government that His Excellency leads, he has through the Ministry of Gender put in place the recruitment agencies. In other words, on one hand, you are abusing
On the other hand, you are
the
promoting.
program. On the other hand, you are putting in place structures that should enable this person to go. Now, those who go, do they have enough protection mechanism even to access what they call labor justice? If we just go into this particular theme for that day to increase their productivity, first and foremost, in what sectors are we sending our Ugandans? When you send, as a president, you are briefed on your minister to go and sign a bilateral labor agreement for domestic workers. You as a president, because he is briefed. I know for sure that he is briefed that the Honorable Betty Among has gone to Qatar to sign this kind of
Unless
MOU.
the state is divided.
Unless he's telling us he's not aware that the sectors we are sending into these people, it is domestic work. By the way, security, construction, drivers. But let me talk about some of these sectors. With all due respect, I respect the workers in the domestic work sector. It is not to undermine them, but the high level of vulnerability and risks and abuses in this sector, you cannot then stand as a president and say that you are blaming people who are going in to work where? To work there. Yet you have signed, and the MOU or the BLA is talking about persons who go and work as domestic workers. By the way, where we are sending construction workers, drivers, we don't even have MOU. The MOU which was signed between Uganda and the United Arab Emirates, it was actually not even operationalized.
All right.
Okay. So just 1 second as I go. The protection mechanism for a migrant worker, they're supposed to be throughout the entire system of migration, from here in Uganda up to where they go. When these people are being recruited to go, do you know the kind of extortion that these people are undergoing? Some people are being extorted money, some by the companies that are being licensed by the government, and others by individuals that are
unscrupulous people.
We don't have. Let me give you a quick summary. In Saudi Arabia, where we are sending most of our young ladies, the Saudi Arabia, when you look at it in its square kilometers, miles, it is bigger than the whole of East Africa minus Congo. So it has the different cities, but we have one embassy and one labor attaché.
And he's sick now. And
so one embassy, one labor attaché. If someone is deployed, is a worker, if he's deployed in Mecca as a state, our embassy is found in Riyadh. Just imagine a domestic worker from my village in Kamuli to be able to negotiate her way from Mecca as Jeddah as a state to come to Riyadh.
Let me hear from you. What would you recommend?
Can we have labor centers in every state? Other countries have done it. The Philippines have they don't have labor attaches, by the way. They have labor centers. Labor centers have social workers. Correct. They have lawyers. They have counselors. They have people,
lawyers,
liaison officers,
the
paralegals that are receiving these people. If you went and asked our embassy in Riyadh how many Ugandans are actually working in Saudi Arabia, do you have a database? It's not there. How would they give protection?
Correct.
How can we even enforce in terms of just enforcing the contracts that are signed between these people who are going to work abroad and their employers? Ugandan workers, they don't get a chance. Why? Because we don't have labor centers that are able to even to offer legal representation in the countries of destination, not when they are back here. So the entire protection mechanism for both the migrant workers, but also for the majority of Ugandans that are remaining here. I think, look at the industrial court, Kenneth. The industrial court sits, it's only one, and it sits in Kampala. It has regional sittings, but those are dependent on the budget. Where there is no budget for it to move to the region, it will not go. But we have high court circuits. Why can't the industrial court? Circuits. Why can't the industrial court
move
in every where there is a high court? There should also be an industrial court.
There should be a judge.
From Kabong should not wait until when there is a sitting somewhere in northern region. That's when he will be think of going before the industrial court.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Topic of discussion today, as we commemorate International Labour Day, we are looking at the silent issues in Uganda, and I'm speaking to Ms. Lydia Bwite, Manager Rights, Social Protection and Accountability at the Platform for Labour Action. Also in studio, Mr. Abdallah Kayonde, President Migrant Workers Voice Uganda. When we return from the break, we'll be joined by another panelist who has been attending the commemoration in Fort Portal to continue discussing those silent issues in Uganda. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0709 0703 090 090.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are commemorating the International Labour Day, and we are looking at the silent issues in the country. Our theme this year has been improving access to labour justice, a prerequisite for increased productivity. National commemoration took place in Fort Portal. President Yoweri Museveni was the chief guest, and one of his key messages, as you heard from Lydia, was criticizing those who have turned it a habit of going to work in Arab countries. He talked about unemployment problem, saying that it shouldn't be an issue in Uganda if you embraced the 4-acre model plan towards poverty alleviation. He also talked about the issue of minimum wage. He said those who are calling for a minimum wage and laws of unemployment, increasing labor court judges and others, he says they do not address the real cause of their problems in the labor market. And he says there is need to focus more on making wealth as a key tool in responding to all those issues. I'm speaking to 3 guests today. One of them is Ms. Lydia Buite from the Platform for Labour Action, Mr. Kayonde Abdallah, who is from the Migrant Workers' Voice. On the line, we are joined by Mr. Asha Wilson Owere, who is from the External Labour Powerhouse. But before we bring in Mr. Owere, let's hear from you, Mr. Kayonde. What would be your recommendation on this issue of external employment? How can we ensure that our people that are sent abroad are actually secure? What are other countries doing?
When you look at Philippines and you benchmark well, these are countries that understood this business. Philippines earns around $33 billion from this formal business of labor externalization. Now look at Uganda, is in 1 point something. And there is potential, if at all they borrow from what the Philippines and others, Sri Lanka and others are trying to do.
What have they done?
What they did, first of all, they recognized the welfare arrangements of those they export or of those they externalized. Key priority, they actually started it from their home. Even this is what African Union is proposing to pilot in Uganda. But it recommended it some time back for African countries to borrow from Philippines, to have a workers' administration or a social welfare administration registered and based from the countries of origin, and then make sure that whoever leaves, there is a general database. Whoever is a potential migrant is captured in that category, in that database, which speaks and explains the spelling of their job descriptions. Then when they reach there, they have packages. They have a package to be followed up, monitored, listened to. They have centers like Madame Lydia has told you. These call centers, the OWA, they call it, they actually have that administration of workers called the OWA, Overseas Workers Welfare something, Association for the Migrant Workers. It was constituted from their constitution in the Philippines. People associate before leaving, and when they radiate from all countries, they have where they come back and be checked. Yes. Even when one has a question or is stuck somewhere, the OWA members and the OWA centers in different cities, like in Jeddah, Dammam, when you go there, they have OWA. When you go to Dubai, they have OWA. So if we are really in the same business, we can borrow. These people use these centers to listen in, to quickly handle civil matters. And actually what Philippines did, they do not mix criminal arrangements or diplomatic issues into labor civil arrangements, because they respect their diplomacy. You cannot promote coffee in Saudi Arabia and at the same time you want to go and fight a battle of a Kadama who was alleged of losing a kidney. It jeopardizes your interests. But this is the case in Uganda.
Let's not use that word Kadama.
Okay, migrant worker. The case in Uganda is where every hope for securing or rescuing a migrant worker is rested into the arms of the embassy, which embassy is actually barred or constrained by the Vienna Convention to actually go into some of the disputes we are talking about. These disputes are supposed to be handled either by paralegals or community members or the workers' associations or unions or whatever, which can collectively bargain for their welfare and go into actually labor courts. Because Saudi and these Arab countries, by the way, they have labor courts. But you ask yourself, who represents Ugandans there?
All right. Let's go to Mr. Owere, who was in Fort Portal. Mr. Owere, you are historical in these issues of labor rights and advocacy. When you were sitting in Fort Portal there, you had the president talking about the issues of unemployment, issues of minimum wage, and even talked about the issues of those externalized to work in those Arab countries. What would be your take on these issues as we commemorate the International Labor Day? Well, I think we've lost Mr. Owere there. He went off. We're going to try and get back to him to see if he can contribute to us. So we respond. We heard from the president. We have also looked at the issue of externalization of labor, and let's try to look at the issue of unemployment a little bit extensively, Lydia. President Museveni thinks, we are making a lot of noise about these issues of unemployment, but we're not listening to the government message to actually create wealth, which then will reduce the pressure on looking for jobs. People are looking for jobs, and most of them are actually looking at the government jobs, which are very limited. Even the private sector itself is not creating more jobs. So we probably should listen to the voice of the president.
I hear you that, because of the high rates of unemployment in the country, therefore we should not be talking about protecting those that are working. But I think it is a wrong approach. And I think that's where the economists of this country have misled the president. I can say that with certainty. That if we always only focus and say, if the one who is working is not protected, the one who is working is supposed to save and create perhaps more employment. Even, for example, let us talk about, these things moves around. The governance is a cycle, it moves. If a lady is growing vegetables, let's imagine he has gotten PDM and is growing vegetables, is selling them. Are there people to consume the vegetables? If they are not working, no, they are not there.
All right.
So, is the person
Mr. Owere has joined us on the line. I'll come back for that particular response from you. Good evening, Mr. Owere, and thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Owere, are you with us on the line? Can you hear us, Mr. Owere? Well, we still can't get through. So let's continue,
yes.
Lydia.
So you cannot create wealth when people are earning peanuts.
Correct.
It's not possible. We can't create wealth when people are earning peanuts. By the way, even when I get the PDM money that is talking about government programs, because to the president, whenever we come to this day, is always thinking about the programs that are running. Okay? Even when I got those programs, how many people, when they get this money, are able to generate employment for others? How many? Let's look at the program that YLP. How did it perform? What was the potential and how did it perform? So we need to be able. Now this one PDM is giving to the individual. Okay, they are in a group, but again you get that money. You as a person. So you're using it you as a person. Are you creating employment? Are you creating opportunity? I'm not sure if the government is actually working towards addressing unemployment. I am not sure.
They're actually promoting corruption because the whole dream is utopia. It doesn't really fit the ground where it wants.
Let's hear from you, Abdallah. The issue of creating jobs here, going abroad to work and do those kind of jobs that Lydia was talking about should be a last resort. How can we ensure job creation here to ensure that most of these young people who are living, some of them are even graduates, to get jobs here and work here? Shouldn't we be listening to the president who actually thinks we should go into areas like agriculture, we should go into issues that are here that can help us to create wealth instead of looking at wages and getting money from employment?
Well, we shall not water down all the president's proposal and initiative. But now, anything. All right, Mr. Owere is on the line. Good evening, Mr. Owere. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
All right, you were in Fort Portal. You were in the Fort Portal today. President Yoweri Museveni addressed the country, talked about issues of unemployment, talked about the issues of dispute resolution, and also talked about issues of the minimum wage. You've been a veteran in this area of advocating for the rights of the workers. What came to your mind as the president articulated these issues?
You journalists, you have never studied President Museveni. He has his own ideology. And when it's on a day like today, on Labor Day, he was not talking to workers. He was talking to the local people. And he was just by mistake trying to answer some of what workers are trying to say. For him, his mind is to empower the local people, not about creating jobs, it's not about strengthening labor administration. That area has very, very little focus on that. And let me tell you, because we have achieved a lot because I studied him and I knew how to approach, and which he is totally not in for issues of labor. And today, that confirms really that even after the speeches of NOTU and the Federation of Uganda Employers, when he came on the podium, what did he start with? He started with the language in the area, talking to the local people in the language. He called the gentleman to try to tell people that for him, that is the line he's towing. So for us, what we are talking about, the issue of labor, is strengthening labor administration, that is not his area. Actually, for him, his focus now is looking at the local people and how he can empower them. But my worry with he may have a very good idea, but he is not the implementers. Whether they have not conceptualized his idea, they are not even implementing it. Because really, for him, he's talking about somebody who just picked the idea and is now running it. Now you are telling him that, we want to strengthen industrial court, and he's telling you, no, I cannot do that. Where will I get money? And so on. And he's telling you about the land, and he's calculating. Today's Labor Day, people who attended and people who listened to President Museveni is totally on another mission. His ideology is not actually the issue of labor. And if labor, you were supposed to strengthen it, we will use another angle, not the angle of talking to His Excellency the President. And that's what I learned from the Labor Day today. Because out of what the speech the Chairman General of NOTU gave was a very good speech, but he only picked two things. He only picked the casualization and then another issue. So imagine that kind of, but for him, 90% of his focus was on the local people, telling them how they must create wealth. Now, where I also don't agree with him is where he's saying that the jobs are here. The jobs are not, their jobs may be here, but what system of education are we having in this country? You are training people theory from primary one up to university. People don't have skills. Now, at university level, the population of youth in Uganda now, between 18 and 78, between 18 and 35 years, we have 78% of the young people who are actually jobless. And that population is very, very youth. It is actually an explosion. Now, there are many areas you can his system is okay, the ideology may be okay, but at what space are you creating this job? Do you have mechanism how to implement this idea? The biggest problem is that the government of Uganda does not have that speed at which this can be implemented. I've seen skills development which is now taking place is a bit being implemented, but because this is done through his office. But when you look at Minister of Labor, for example, this is a huge ministry where you have 5 ministers. Now, the budget for that ministry is very small. I don't even know whether it has reached 5%. So this is where the problem is. President is speaking something else. His government is also speaking something else. Now you have parliament, you have president. Now, the communication there is not right. It's a serious mismatch in terms of employment, in terms of implementing policies on labor issues, and this is now affecting job creation. Now, the job creation the president is talking about is the farming. Now, our country is full, actually, let me say almost 90% is agriculture. Now, if you look at the policy now, does the policy really drive us into that area of creating jobs or ensuring that the young people we have? Because if you have 78% of the young people, that is a very big labor force.
All right.
How do you entice?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Were. Thank you very much, Mr. Were, for giving us that feedback from Fort Portal, where you attended the International Labour Day. Let's get back here in studio. You heard from Mr. Were there, reflecting on what transpired there.
Yes.
So, do you think, as Ugandan workers, we have a reason to commemorate this day, to celebrate?
I was actually expecting that the workers' representatives that were there would march out. I would have expected them to just march out, because for sure, the president's address was not for the workers. It was actually an address about PDM. Overall, like how it's like a nation's address about the different government programs. It was not a focused address to the workers on the issues, because you see the way the presentation is done is that the workers first come and present, the employers present, and then the president is able to what? Is able to also to come and be able to respond to some of the areas which have been raised. But we are not seeing, and he picked out the issue of casualization of labor, and he's saying workers should not be casualized. But look, the system, at first I want to talk about the impunity of employers. The impunity of employers that we are having in this day and era cannot actually support this theme of increased access to labor justice. No. Every employer knows someone who 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 knows someone. Every employer in this country.
Is that a syndicate or what?
I do not know what it is, but that is what it is. Do you know that we have employers? Look at the impunity. Yes, Parliament recently wanted to go and supervise and monitor the work at Lubowa. What happened? If a mere investor or whoever is doing that work can stop a parliamentary committee from accessing the premises, how about workplaces that are guarded by SFC? Those that are guarded by Uganda police, that are guarded by those men in black uniforms. How even the labor officer access them for inspection?
All right.
one labor officer like this in a district. So you can imagine how the system, impunity, how it has engulfed the entire labor and employment sector. And for me, when the workers were there seated, I wonder why they were even singing solidarity songs. They would have just smashed out holding hands, and they sing their solidarity songs along aside there and say, no, Mr. President, you are not listening to us.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners. Good evening, Radio 1. Until minimum wage is enacted by our government, Ugandan workers will still remain at the mercy of employers who will exploit us and repatriate all the profits. Uganda for all, everyone for him or herself. We have another comment from Samuel Mary Yigam, who says, sincerely speaking, policies concerning labor are weak and in most cases favor the so-called investors to an extent of rampant tax exemptions to them, leaving natives to suffer with huge taxes. Another problem is in Mr. Museveni, the president, who distanced himself from minimum wage bill, claiming the so-called investors need cheap labor in Uganda in order to make wealth. Well, that's his contribution there. Excellent, Madam Lydia, you have nailed it on the head. It's the government of Uganda to blame on excessive unemployment. The 4-acre approach is not practical for a myriad of reasons, such as 1, massive land grabbing by government cadres with guns, poor farming methods with no agriculture extension workers. The government of Uganda does not help farmers to market their products. The government of Uganda priorities are always on luxurious spending. Another comment: do these people in the Ministry of Gender internalize those themes they put up? How do you talk about labor justice with over 50 districts without labor officers, without wage laws? We need clear laws first, and then we talk about justice.
Correct.
Thank you. That is Joseph, who is listening in from Ottawa in Canada. We have another comment. So disappointed in you, Kenneth. Why waste time on Oweres? He has been in that office for over 10 years. Well, Mr. Owere is one of the historicals as far as issues of labor justice is concerned in this country. And as you might have heard from him, he seemed to be disappointed with actually what happened today in Fort Portal. Well, let's respond to some of these issues as we close this discussion. I'll begin with you, Mr. Kayonde. As we leave this platform, what is the message that you would want the stakeholders out there to hear?
To me, as we summarize, I think the president is getting puzzled with the status quo of the globalization taking place and also the policies he also embraced. Now, when he gets tired of the influences, the global influences, he chooses to go back and wants to promote what he had dropped before. Don't you see that? To me, I think this is what is confusing, and yet the population has caught fire to go with the global forces. The push factors, you see people moving to go get better wages, or they push him here to put a better wage and he doesn't listen. He wants you to go back and do what you already got tired of. So for us as migrant workers' voice, we only pray that wish that government gets to its normal senses, and they get to understand the status where we are, and then embrace policies we are calling for, so that we continue to go work. They actually can earn more revenue from our zeal to go and work.
All right.
We don't want to say that maybe we are going to join agriculture again. That is impossible.
All right, let's hear from Lydia as we leave this platform. What is your concluding remark?
I think first and foremost, I want to encourage workers and the workers' organizations out there. I think it is high time, if they have not yet done it, to start thinking about a workers' manifesto. We are going into election period, and I think it is time for them to set their ground. So at the end of every 5 years, you are able to hold the person who promised you to do this, and so that when you do that workers' manifesto, is it able to be reflected, for example, in the NRM manifesto? So that maybe it's the only way workers' issues are going to be heard. By the way, if you read the NRM manifesto, protection of workers is not one of them. It's about wealth creation, and it's no wonder even today he used it to talk about the NRM manifesto, but not the workers' issues. So I would encourage the workers out there, and especially the workers' organization. It is time now that we come up with a manifesto. We present it to the political parties, including NRM that is currently governing, but we are able to see
different
that
groups have come up with manifestos. The youth, and we're still talking about unemployment.
And you say when the youth, when they did a manifesto,
does it have to be a political issue so that it is solved?
It is. It becomes, because what I've realized is this: once something is not the focus of that political party in the ruling government,
favored.
it will not be addressed. So we need to see, how do we make this issue a priority in the political parties' manifestos, so that going forward, let's say if it is the NRM still leading, we are able to hold it accountable in their midterm reviews that they do, and say, you told the workers you're going to do this, how far have you gone? Some of these things, I think for me, I've always told people that every day is a political day. And therefore, as workers, we need to ensure that we use the political space to be able to forward these issues that are actually still on the table.
All right, I must thank you, Ms. Lydia Buite, Manager, Rights, Social Protection and Accountability at Platform for Labor Action. Thank you for being our guest this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdallah Kayonde, President, Migrant Workers Voice. Thank you for making time to be with us on Spectrum.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Usher Wilson Owere from the External Labor Powerhouse, for joining us on the line there and sharing with us your views as you saw what was happening in Fort Portal. And thank you very much, dear listeners, for contributing to this show. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Lillian Keno. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.